you might have to fix from your end. I hope you can now hear us. Yep. All good. Thank you. So I'll kick off at 10 o'clock sharp. Here we go. So good morning, everyone, and welcome to our first session of the icare Winter Wellness series. My name's Adam O'Leary, and I'm a member of the icare mobile engagement team. Today I'm presenting from Dharawal country, and I pay my respects to the elders, people and ancestors of this country where I'm based. I'd also like to pay my respects to the traditional custodians of the various lands in which we all work from today, and any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people participating in this webinar. The Winter Wellness series is something new that we thought might bring some happiness and motivation in hearing from three amazing speakers with a focus on your personal wellness and well-being, and maybe an opportunity to counteract our struggles associated with what has been cold, miserable weather, the various illnesses doing the rounds, and our everyday increases to the cost of living. So a very wise old man recently shared a message at a mental health forum of ours. And Jeff, you know this wise old man. His name is Mr. Matthew Elliott. And his message was, if you don't make time for your wellness, you will be forced to make time for your illness. So I'll repeat that. If you don't make time for your wellness, you will be forced to make time for your illness. And I really like this quote, and I do congratulate everyone for attending today, as you are making time for your wellness by attending this session. Today you will hear from the amazing Jeff Hardy. Next month will be Joe Kerrigan, and September will be Anthony Minicello. So as you can see, we have some great speakers lined up. So just a bit of housekeeping before I introduce Jeff. Everyone's cameras and mics are disabled, so there are no interruptions. And the chat box is closed during the main part of the session. We will reopen the chat box at the end of the session for feedback on today's session and to allow you to ask any questions you might have of Jeff. This session has also been recorded and will be available on our webpage in approximately 2 to 3 weeks' time. We'll also share Jeff's details so you can make direct contact should you have any interest in getting Jeff out to your worksite to chat with your people. So joining me today is our special guest speaker, Mr. Jeff Hardy. I'm very lucky to have gotten to know Jeff over the past few years and can say that his smile, his happiness and his contagious laugh is real and a regular feature in his interactions. Jeff is a proud Gamilaroi Alarai man, an ex-teacher and mentor, an amazing rugby league player playing at the elite level with the Illawarra Steelers and the St. George Dragons, which included 3 grand finals. Well done, Jeff. But most of all, Jeff is a proud man and a very humble human being. Today, Jeff is going to present on timeless practices through his story and that of his mob. So on that note, Jeff, thanks for joining us and welcome today.
Thanks, Adam. Great to be here, mate.
So, so you've got some pretty amazing, a pretty amazing journey in life that you're going to share with us today.
Yes, I'll go through a bit of my story, and whilst my stories it can be about me, they get a chance for people to reflect on their own. I share a bit about my culture, my sporting background, my family history, and a little bit of truth telling, bit of cultural history, but practices that can be employed that our old people used and employed for their well-being that people can still use and are still relevant today.
Well, on that note, we might as well kick it off then, Jeff.
Thanks, Ad, and to the people, I'd like to acknowledge you for attending today. I too acknowledge the elders who looked after country, cared for country. I'm on Dharawal country as well, and to wherever you're coming from, to the elders, to the people. But to you personally, I'd like to say thank you for attending and acknowledge your presence here today. It's important. It's important to know that our old people, our stories were passed down through generation after generation through story, and the importance of story is so significant in the culture. Passed down 60,000 years of story, generation after generation, and to share story, then celebrate through song and dance. So I'll start a little bit off with my story. My story begins, I'll go back to my grandparents, and And Dad grew up in humble beginnings in a little town called Brewarrina, which is northwest New South Wales. We might have some people from out that way tuning in. And my grandfather and big mum, they were from a little town further up called Angledale. And Dad grew up on the riverbank, dirt floors, no running water, no electricity, in a tin shack. They called a gunya or a gundi on the river. And Brewarrina, he had a large family, 9 sisters and 2 brothers. His dad spoke 3 or 4 languages, but his grandfather was put on the mission and then moved away to be on the river. Dad didn't go to school that often. He rowed the boat across because he's on the other side of the river. He had to row the boat, wanted to row, wanted to bail to get himself into town to go to school. But he had a love of music. And his mother was a wonderful gospel singer and taught him how to sing. And he had an old wireless and got himself a guitar and he taught himself how to play the guitar and sing. And when they were looking for Aboriginal talent to come down to Sydney back in the 50s, they said the school teacher at the time told the lady, you should come and see this young Aboriginal fellow out at Brewarrina. He's a wonderful singer. His name's Cole Hardy. And she did. And she came out and saw him and said, how would you like to come down? And Dad from a little country town way out in Brewarrina said, yeah, okay, I'll come down. And Brewarrina is famous because it's got the oldest man-made structure in the world out there. It's called our Aboriginal fish traps, Nunu, on the river out there. And 8 different tribes who spoke 8 different languages used and built the fish traps and cared for the fish traps. And the Yallerai people, Kamilaroi people, the Nyamba people of Brewarrina, the Wawan, the Morori, all used the fish traps. So the fish traps are an amazing place, a place of togetherness, a place of belonging, a place of story, a place of ceremony. And so it's significant to acknowledge where Dad came from, where Dad grew up. And that's the little town of Brewarrina and Angledale further up the road. Dad came down and he met my mum. And my mum has been a wonderful person, has looked after and cared for our family and been a guiding light. She's from Newcastle, non-Aboriginal person. But I grew up in an extended family because Dad had lots of sisters, so I had lots of cousins. And if cousins were coming down to the city to live, they'd say, you go and live with Uncle for a while, stay with him. So I grew up with cousins living with us all the way through. And it was a wonderful upbringing. And my mum was probably responsible for looking and caring after all of us and all the other cousins that lived with us. And that's why I've got a sense of the importance of family and belonging from, from the love and the care that I got from my family. Dad followed his music career. He came down with nothing. He came down with the guitar on his back and that was it. And he played in a couple of shows and they were called the All Coloured Show. And some of the older people might recognise a fellow named Jimmy Little from Walgett. And he was on the show and Dad still got the posters of All Coloured Show where he played and went around the clubs. He was only going to stay down for a couple of weeks and they gave him a job at Sydney Water. He ended up staying for 37 years. And that's how he met Mum and stayed. And therefore I was born in Sydney. And it's so good to go back out to Brewarrina. It's so good to take him back out to see the town, to see where he's from and to know the story. I think that's an important lesson for all of us, is to know our story, to know where old people, where they come from, who walked before us. As my uncle said, now old people survived so we could thrive. And to learn about the Aboriginal history and the struggles that they went through and the fact that they survived such tough circumstances to show the resilience to be where they are today. And to take my kids out and to show them where Dad and grandfather and our ancestors are from and to walk in their footsteps, I think is a really important part of everyone's story and everyone's history, that they connect back and do that. I met my wife whilst in Sydney. We had an amazing family as well. We have 4 wonderful children. My daughter's gone on to be a wonderful teacher. My son's a fireman. The other son's working at the ports. But I also tell the story of my big son in the middle, and that's Jaden. And Jaden's severely autistic. And we didn't know what autism was when he was growing up. We were noticing behaviours about him. Around the 18-month mark, he wasn't listening. And whilst I'd call out to him and he wouldn't come, his sister might be putting the wiggles on. He might be in the other room and he'd hear the wiggles and he'd come running out. I'd say, Joanne, what's going on here? Jaden can hear the wiggles, but he can't hear me. And she goes, oh, I don't know. But then she was reading a story in the paper, the Daily Telegraph, I'll never forget it, about this family with an autistic child. And she says, this is Jaden, this is him. I said, what do you mean? She goes, look, have a look at this. how he doesn't communicate, how he just in his own world, does his own thing, obsessed with certain things. When the Wiggles was on, you could not take the video out without him watching all the credits with his face right up against the screen, and how he'd run the cars back and forth in front of himself like that. And I said, well, how do we find out then? And she said, well, we've got to get a psychologist out. And I'll never forget it. Dr. Lydia Fagan came out and she sat in our lounge room. She goes, just let him play. And she watched Jaden and Janae just playing normally. And at the end of it, she was taking notes and we're sitting there nervously. And then she said, yes, Jaden is autistic. He's right up this end of the spectrum. I said, what does that mean for us? She goes, well, I can't really tell you, but it means it's going to be a hell of a challenge. And hell of a challenge it has been. Jaden's been an absconder, a runner ever since. So I've stayed fit, not from playing footy. I've stayed fit because I've chased him for the last 20 years, out the door, down the street, into people's homes. And his obsessions became lifts, elevators, travelators. And you find them at train stations, airports, and shopping centres. So over the years, Jaden and a lot of autistic people are really smart in certain things, or they're really captivated on certain things. So he knows every single train station in Australia. He knows every shopping centre in Australia because I know, because I've been to them all. So he'll say to me, he'll come up and say, Daddy, let's go Melbourne. Let's go Melbourne. I go, oh, okay. What do you want to do in Melbourne? He'll go on lots of trains. He can talk a little bit when he needs to, not real lot. I'll say, what else will we do in Melbourne? He go, lots and lots of trains. And so he'll type all the stations up. He can self-type 100 words a minute. And he gives them, because family holidays went out the window. We used to go to SeaWorld and Dreamworld with the kids when they were young, but I'd spend all my day chasing them while the other kids are doing the rides and everything. So Anne would say, well, you take him on his own personal holidays and do the things he loves. So ever since then, I go and she'll book us into Melbourne, Southern Cross, right near the station. I know, Southern Cross, 16 platforms. I've been to all of them. And Jaden will catch trains for 12, 14 hours a day. And certain rules when you go on trains, you've got to go down the escalator once, walk along the platform, up the lift. And you can only go on them once, not twice, just once. And then when you're on the lift or on the escalator, you can't move. You've got to wait till it gets off to the end before you step off. You can't hurry. So if there's a train going, you can't run down the steps to get on it because no sense of time. Got to do it right. They're the rules. And so I tell the story about Jaden. Like his favourite ones are the travelators at the international airport. And to go to the international airport, the ones where you go through customs and there's 3 travelators that go to the platform, to the bay to catch the plane. We know because I've been on them. And he doesn't realise, but to get to those ones, you've got to have a ticket, you've got to have a passport, and you've got to get through customs. Yes, so many times he'll run there, he'll try and run through, past the security, they're chasing him, I'm chasing them, federal police are chasing us, there's stacks on the mill, get us in, get us out. And whilst I can laugh about it, it's been one hell of a challenge. But that's Jaden and that's how he is. And I don't tell the story for sympathy. I just tell the story to show that we all are faced with challenges. Everyone's faced with challenges in our life. And particularly right now in today's life, we're all going through tough times, tough challenges. But it's not the challenge that defines you. It's how you respond to the challenge. And whilst there's been lots of tears and lots of mistakes and along the way, it's how we've committed as a family, how our parents have come close together with us to help raise and look after Jaden, and the people around us, our carers that we've now got involved with Jaden. It's helped us get through. And everyone's faced with a challenge. And as my uncle said, there's always a lesson. You always learn something from it, from all our experiences. And what I've learned about Jaden is I've learned about patience. I've learned about tolerance. And I've learned about being grateful for what I have. Not the material things I have, but the physical things I've been possessed with. And having Jaden, he's made me a better person. And whilst you are faced with challenges, it's how you reframe and how you look at it and the story you tell yourself about it is the most important thing, and how you respond. And yeah, that's Jaden. He's jumped up on the stage with the Wiggles. He's done it all. I got to play footy. And I got to play rugby league, and I loved rugby league as a kid. When Dad came down to Sydney State, he supported Belmont. Larry Cotton was live, and it was wonderful. But I don't say much about my rugby league. I got to play in 3 grand finals, Adam said, and I lost them all. I didn't win one, 2 to the Broncos and 1 to the Sea Eagles, but an amazing chapter of my life. And I thought it might be the greatest thing I ever did, but it wasn't. the lessons I learned from footy were the greatest things that I ever did. And to be able to use those lessons about being a good team player, about being resilient, about persevering and training hard and being committed, all those things you learn in sport. Yeah, and to play at elite level. And I just love the game so much to play. And I love to train and being part of the team. It was a special time. My greatest compliment came from a trainer at the Dragons. I think this is another great lesson for all people, all families, and all teams. Brian Wilmot is our boxing trainer and our on-field trainer. He's a good cut man and a good corner man and with pad work. So if you're injured, you go and see Wildcat and you do boxing training. And he's just a good fellow, respected by all the players, tough, but uncompromising, but just a good bloke. And I looked up to him, and he was at the club before I was there, and he was at the club after I'd left. And 5 years after I retired, I saw him down the beach. He loved surfing. And he come up and we're having a yarn, having a chat. And he goes, Jeffrey, I want to tell you something. I never got to tell you this way at the club, but I want to tell you now. He goes, when you were there, you were the glue. You looked after the young blokes. You sung the team song. You looked after uniforms and getting people together and going to see people and just really bringing the group together. And I said, oh, Wildcat, that really means a lot to me. Not only was I pursuing my own career, but I was helping others, and and I won the club and the year award and those types of things. And I said, that really means a lot because I wasn't the best player in the team. I was lucky to have a career and hang in there, but I was no superstar. But to play for as long as I did, and nearly 240 odd games, and I got to play 4 seasons in England. It was fond memories just from perseverance and hanging in there and working really hard. And like I said, those lessons and his compliment, better than any trophy I've ever received. And I said to him, can I tell that story? And he goes, yeah, for sure you can. He goes, I still tell the story. And so I'd like to share that story with you about being the glue and being that person. And I look at it and I applied that to after I retired, and I went back to teaching. I became a teacher and I went back to teaching and went to Endeavour Sports High School and coached a rugby league program, involved in OzTag outside of it and team sports, and using those lessons that I learned from footy to apply to younger people. That's been the greatest part of my journey, outside of family, a part of my journey in sport and in work life. And to coach kids and bring them together and create a team spirit, using those lessons that I've learned, being the glue to be able to draw people together has been, the greatest part of my journey. And from that, after that, to apply it to another program that I've been involved in, and that's been the Clontarf program, which is an Aboriginal boys mentoring program. And where we live in the Shire, we have the Aboriginal hostel up the road, Kirinari Hostel. And Aboriginal kids come from all over the state, interstate even, to come down to pursue education, chase a sporting dream or get away from a town because it's not safe, or come down to because they're not going to school, they're going through tough times. And to have the hostel there, it's been there for 50 years and to be involved in that for the last 30 odd years in some capacity, I felt obliged to help these kids. And because they're coming to my country where I'm living, and a lot of them are away from country for the first time, usually academically behind, sometimes health problems undetected, but to see them come and then to play a part in their life. And the Clontarf Foundation is a mentoring program in schools, which started in one school way back in 2000 and now is in over 148 schools across the country, putting mentors in the school, creating a place where they belong. When I look back at why I was the glue, why I was the glue at the Dragons, and Matty Elliott, as you may have heard from, and Ads talked about before, he was there. And he helped me make me feel comfortable. Ricky Walford, another Aboriginal player, was there before I was there, and someone I looked up to, and he made me feel comfortable. So I felt accepted, and I felt valued, and I was willing to try things, willing to go out on a limb, willing to sing a song, willing to be vulnerable without fear of rejection or shame. And those things, that belonging, which is part of our culture, you're born into belonging, is so important today. And to create an environment of belonging is what we did at school for these kids, where they would come, because Aboriginal kids don't finish school at the same rates as non-Aboriginal kids. And to create a place within the school and have fellas within the school as mentors where they can attach to and belong to has been a key, and it's changed behavior. An example of this was, there's a fella I got through school, and this is a message he sent to me as photos come up on my phone. I send out to the fellows I've been involved with over the years, and they stay in touch and stay involved. And there's a young bloke about 5 or 6 years ago, and well, real good, had a real great relationship. He went down a bad track, and he a bit of drinking, a bit of substance abuse and stuff like that. He got through school, and he went back off to the country. He was from the country. I hadn't heard from him for a while, but I'd sent him messages, and then he sent me this message, and I won't read it all, but just to say, I'm so honestly, thank you for being such a good mentor to me over the years. I've matured since leaving school, got a good job, and getting through life really good. A lot of it's because of the advice you gave me at time and helping with my sport, my relationships. And I just want to say thank you. Sorry for being a headache back then. Absolutely he was. And thank you for the messages and the continuing support. That means a lot to me. And I think that means a lot to everyone. This story, whilst it's about me, it's about us all. And it's about how we connect and how we care and how we make people feel like we belong. And it's particularly during hard times, particularly during tough times, our teams where you work, your sport, your family, all the tribes that you belong to. How are you making people feel like they belong? Who's the person in your life that's made you feel like you belong? The person in your team. This is a chance to reflect and look at your role in your team, your role in your workplace, because I've seen it being so successful. I've seen how it works, and by creating that what our old people had. Our old people, Aboriginal culture was built around respect for all things, respect for country. We say country is people, country is the environment, country is the waterways, the sky, the stars, the animals, the plants, and to look after everything. So you had a connection to country, a love of all things, but you had a responsibility to look after things. That essence, that culture is so relevant now. And to have that connection, to have that belonging is key. And, in your team, in your tribe, how are you going? Who's the person that makes you feel like you belong? At work or over some time in your life? Who's the person that you've looked up to? Who's the person that's been there for you? What did they do? How did they create that belonging? Can you do that? Because we're so busy these days. We know each other through email. We know each other through message. We know each other through what we've got to do at work. But do we really know each other? Do we really sit down at times and share story? In Aboriginal culture, obviously, it was passed down through story. So our elders were the knowledge holders. They held the stories. They held the knowledge. So you had to sit down and listen. In Aboriginal culture, you sit and listen to elders. And the more you listened, the more you held on to that story, you had responsibility to hold the story, pass the story on, and use the knowledge that you were taught. Elders these days are sometimes neglected. Our old people, we go to our phones, we go to technology for knowledge. Whereas sitting in the circle, sharing stories is so relevant now. Obviously, COVID and the conditions we've gone to, we haven't been able to see each other face to face. But to be able to get those connections back again, because I know when we go on and we sit with an elder, how good it is, but it's good for everyone. It's good for the elder to pass it on. It's good for you to gain knowledge. It's good for the young people to hear from the elders. It teaches us about respect. It teaches us about slowing down. Because when you're with an elder, they move a bit slower. So you've got to come back to their level and you've got to listen. I think that's a real forgotten art, is listening. So everyone in the circle is important. The old people, the young people, the adults, us, we've got a role to play in connecting the circle and connecting our group. And that applies to our workplace. That applies to our teams, our sporting groups, our hobby groups outside. How are we, the modern day elder in a modern day society? Connect with our elders, the story holders, because our elders, they're doing their job. That's what they're supposed to do there. Everyone wins. Everyone wins. They're supposed to pass on knowledge. Today's world, our elders are lonely, really lonely. We just lost our mother-in-law not long ago, and my wife would go to the to the nursing home where she was for the last couple of years and take cakes for the other ones. And we got to know the nurses really well. One of our friends works there. And she said, a lot of these older people don't get visitors. And I was so sad to hear that. So my wife would buy extra cookies and extra bickies and hand them out when she got there. She's just a great person at connecting with the elders. An old elder and old uncle had a wonderful teaching I'd like to share with you. And he'd say, you have to give it away to keep it. And I thought, it made me think deeply, what is that? What's that story he's talking about? And can't have an orange and give an orange away, but no, it was deeper than that. If you have knowledge, you give it away to keep the knowledge. You share the story to keep the story. You share respect to get respect. You share caring to keep caring. Honesty to be honesty, to keep honesty. You have to give it away to keep it. I think it's a wonderful learning, a wonderful teaching for us all. And one I've asked him, could I share? And he loves that I shared it. I'll put on Uncle Max. He's passed on now. Another thing in Aboriginal culture, we have respect for our elders, auntie, uncle. So if you're an elder, you might have biological connection to that young person, but you're called auntie and uncle because they respect you for what you do within the community and how you help with others. And auntie and uncles so play a role. So wherever you go in all the communities you live in, that's auntie so-and-so, that's uncle so-and-so, because they're a person that does stuff for in the community for all the community. So they gain the title of being auntie or uncle. And it's the same with us. We have to have a significant other, regardless of culture or background. Having a mentor, having someone, a coach, a truth teller, a teacher who's helped you, who's guided you. I bet you can think now of someone who you looked up to, who's someone who's cared for you, someone who's helped you along your way on your journey to be where you are today. And that's like culture again. You have a role to hold that knowledge, then use that knowledge. So have a mentor, then you've got to be a mentor. So you're a lifelong learner. You're constantly learning, you're constantly teaching, and you're constantly mentoring someone else. And as old as I am, I've still got mentors I call up and speak to and ask, and on my cultural journey to speak to the elders and find out more things and new things. Find one, be one. Another lesson for us all. And something that should be created within your workplace, within your team. So, because having someone there that you can go to, once again, it creates that connection, that bond, which changes behavior, which increases team output, productivity, that belonging. So in a nutshell, relationships, nothing's more important than relationships you build. You need others and others need you. And my dad always says, you've got to thank the non-Aboriginal people. He goes, we would never got to without them coming up and taking me down to Sydney, and then without you and the coaches. And regardless of culture, we all need each other. We all need to work together as one. I think that's reconciliation. I think that's going back to what's happened, going back to the truth, hearing the truth, but then moving forward so that the things that we didn't like, the things that we didn't want to happen, don't happen again. And that we move forward together and it's a better place. And in this year, our NAIDOC theme is now more than ever, we need to stand up. Following the last referendum, we need people, we need to walk with people, and our people, the resilience that they showed are going to come back harder and stronger, but we will need to walk together and be together, and we achieve more when we do it. I love this picture because it shows our culture. It shows our city, the city I'm in anyway, of Sydney, but it also shows smiling faces. And another well-being factor is in another part of our culture, which has got our people through resilience, is laughter, is sharing laughter, being around those people that make you laugh, being with celebrating the wins. That's what I was looking for. Celebrating the wins, as you go along your journey, whatever you're doing in the workplace, whether you're a teacher, whether you're in a hospital, whether you're in a school, we're all human systems first. Teaching or education or medicine are things that we do, but being part of a group, being part of a team, celebrating, enjoying the journey, enjoying the wins, that's medicine as well. That's enjoyment. So take time to be with those people that make you laugh. Encourage them, get around them. When things are going tough, get around them as much as you can. I like to show this picture because it inspires me. It inspires my old people from my culture. But I see the photos and they look proud. They look healthy. They look strong. Like there's no F45 back then. There's no Anytime Fitness. No protein shakes. But have a look. It teaches me about, and I didn't even know these people, but they inspire me. And I use these pictures to show young people, our young fellas, have a look at these, our old people, look what they look like. They lived off the land, they lived off the country. Because nowadays our people, since colonization, our people were put on the reserves and missions. They were fed flour. So their creation stories were taken away. Our Dreamtime stories were whitewashed. We weren't allowed to practice culture. That was taken away. So our spirit was taken away. Our land was taken away, or taken off our lands, moved around, put on missions. Then our culture, our families were split up. So all those things were cut, which is really, really sad. Thankfully, our people survived. And thankfully, we can look back to our old people and what they had and look at the inspiration that they had. We can all learn from this. This teaches us about movement. This teaches us about real food, living off the land, being proud, connecting to country, having the tools to get through. The young people, I say, the tools mightn't be the boomerang, the billar, the spear. Knowledge. You might be had the laptop under your arm this time. Carrying knowledge is powerful. Using that knowledge, helping, giving back, being part of that tribe and looking after your tribe. The same today as it was back then. And I didn't even know these people, but they inspire me. And I wonder who inspires you. Someone you know, someone you don't know. And those people that you do know, they might be close to you still. Make sure you thank them and let them know that you inspire them. They inspire you. Because then you've got to be an inspiration for someone else and inspire them as well. Giving back, passing it on. I'm not sure if anyone's heard it or knows of, I hope you do, of Auntie Miriam Rose. She's a wonderful Aboriginal elder from the Territory. And she was our Senior Australian of the Year a couple of years ago. She actually got invited to the Queen's funeral because she's so well known. And she's deeply connected to the country, the first teacher, the first principal from the Northern Territory, a wonderful, wonderful lady. And she has the Miriam Rose Foundation. And I said, can I share your story? Because it's a wonderful one. She was the first teacher because she was working for a non-Aboriginal teacher who got out to teaching communities. And the lady come home and saw Miriam reading the paper. She said, Miriam, can you read? She goes, yeah, I can. She goes, read that paragraph for me. And Miriam read it out to her. And she goes, I want you to help me be a teacher at school. And Miriam did. She helped her and she went on to become a teacher. Now she's opened an art school and she's trained other Aboriginal people to go on and be teachers and have such a wonderful journey. But the big thing that she did for the whole country, she gave the gift of Dadidi. And Dadidi is an Aboriginal form of meditation, of deep listening, of slowing down. She goes, Australia needs this back in the 80s. Well, Australia needs it more even now because we're moving too quick. And Miriam, I urge you to look up some videos of her and you can see some YouTube clips and she speaks about slowing down. You got to move with the flow of the river. And that we all have that deep well inside us. And it's about slowing down, realizing where we've come from, realizing where we're going to, and realizing where we are now, and finding that balance to stop and reflect, not hurrying the river. We hurry too much. A lot of the time, the orange light comes and we speed up and it's telling us to slow down. And I think at a time, it's time to slow down because by slowing down, you get to achieve more down in the long run instead of burning out because so many people are burning out now. And the workplace is demanding so much of us. And we all need to get together as a group and we all need to help each other and realize we're on this journey together. And the lessons from Miriam are a wonderful lesson and finding that balance. And she says we all have that well inside us. We all got to listen to that story inside us. And it's a story we tell ourselves about the situation. Like back to Jaden, the challenges we go through. It's a story you tell yourself is probably the most important story about the events that are coming up and about the events that you're going to next and how you see them and how you challenge them because we're always telling ourselves a story about things. The stories create emotions. If emotions get up, clarity goes down, and anything can happen. Too much, and we spend too much time up on our head, and we're going to come back down, like Miriam says, back down to in our chest, in our hearts, and come from there. And that comes with time, learning to slow down and being in nature and connecting the country. So leading off that is how you invest in you. And I think Ads and Maddie's talk that if you don't invest in your wellness now, you'll be investing in your illness later is so true. It's so important that you invest in you. You know, our bosses, our coaches, our team leaders want us to turn up with enthusiasm each day and perform really well. And good people do that, and they do it daily. And we see it. I'm talking in schools, I talk in hospitals, I talk in correctional centers, and people turn up and do good stuff. But by doing that, you expend a lot of energy. And so you need to replenish that energy. And so it's what you do away from the workplace is really important. How you look after yourself away from the workplace is so important. Well-being, well-being is lots of things. Well-being is not just physical health. Well-being is physical health. Well-being is mental health, emotional health, our spiritual health. And now while people connect to country, country is healing, but looking after country is good for you. And I urge you, you know, where do you like to go? For me, and you can tell by the hairstyle, that's me. I go down in the morning and connect to country, one thing I do. And I swim with a group, go for a run, come back, meet with a group we call the Cronulla Gropers. I'm a non-swimmer. And they said, no, Jeffro, we're going to swim. And you got to wear budgie smugglers. I go, what? In this water with those big grey fellas that swim out the back there? Well, they convinced me to do it, and I've loved it ever since. The water, the cold therapy, yep, budgies on. Sometimes boogalars up around my ears, but it's so good. Cold therapy is so good. But by getting up and moving, by getting up, breathing, by getting up, exercising, and by getting up and greeting, as in culture, we say we greet grandfather son in the morning and thank him for a new day, this day, the first day of our life, for the rest of our life. Is there a place on country that you like to go to, that you connect with? Yep, I love it. Is there a musical instrument that you like to play that you can connect to? Country is pets, country is animals, country is the stars, the trees. How do you connect with those people, those things in your life, your pets, other animals, other places? I love walking in the bush and taking young fellas out, particularly where we are in the national park. We're on a national park in the Shire, and it's full of the old Aboriginal art. And take young fellas out and people out and connect to country and see, walk in the footsteps of the old people and see the rock art that's been there for thousands of years. It's healing, it's good for you. And I know how good I feel once I come back out of the bush and out of nature. As our old uncle says, Mother Nature, the greatest teacher. For us, you know, it's a hospital, it's got all the bush medicine we need. It's a Bunnings, it's got all the timber, all the stuff we need to survive. It's a school, it teaches us. We read country, we listen to country, watch country, the flowers, and when the whales are moving, and the stars, and when the emus are laying their eggs. Country's always talking to us, country's always teaching us. And therefore I say, spend time, take time to go on country. I saw last year Brad Fittler with the State of Origin team, he'd make them take their shoes off and feel the ground. Because you remember as a kid when you played, you'd run on the ground or run in the bush or swim in the ocean, you know, in the water holes or climb the trees. It was great. It felt good. I urge you, take time, spend time on country. If you can, it's been so good that, you know, nowadays I try and take groups on country and walk on country and meet with Aboriginal people. And if you can meet with an elder on country and slow down and listen, it's wonderful and a wonderful experience. I'd like to share a story to finish off, and it's a wonderful story. It's about connection to country. And it's about this young fellow I was mentoring about 7 years ago, and we'd get him through school. He's about 17 at the time, and he come up to me. He's from way out past Armidale, and he said, "Jeffro, I've had enough. I want to go home." I said, "Why? You got to stay. You got to finish school." He goes, "No, I've had enough. I've had enough. I'm going to go back." And I'm thinking, oh. No, you'll be the first one in your family to finish year 12. Just hang in there a bit longer. He was a hostile boy. And I said, how about I ring up uncle and we'll take us for a walk and go for a walk in the bush? And he goes, yeah, that'd be great. Anything to miss a little bit of time at school. And I rang uncle up. I said, I've got a father doing it tough. He wants to go home. Do you think we can go for a walk? He goes, yeah, bring him out. So lucky. He never normally answers the phone, but this time he did. It was meant to be. And when we sat down at the tree, and he waited for a while. He didn't say anything. It was just the three of us. And then after a while, I think, oh, what's he not saying anything? We're just sitting and take us a spot in this tree. It's not the best, biggest, grandest tree. I wonder what Unc's thinking here. And this story had a big effect on me, just as well as the young fella. And then finally I could realize he wanted us to slow down and tune into nature and listen. And then he said to the young fella, what do you see? And the young fella said, I see a tree, Unc. He goes, yeah, that's right. But what else do you see? He goes, nah, I see a tree, Unc. He goes, well, let me tell you what I see. He goes, I see an apartment block there. You know, the ants and the spiders, the insects? Well, they live there. That's their home. He said, I see a hotel. You know, the birds, they fly, they stay for a little bit and they go. The possum might crawl up and stay in the hollow there for a little bit. The goonga, the goanna might come and crawl up, stay for a bit. Then he might go. Did you turn family tree? Yeah. Well, tree represents family because it branches off like different family members. It represents family. And look down the bumps there. It's lost some branches, lost some people along the way in his life, but they're still a part of him. And look how the branches go direction off. Maybe he's gone away, or he's got to change direction from those people he's been with. Change direction in life. That's okay. Keep striving and keep growing up. And he said, look down the bottom down here. Look at those roots. They're all battered and broken. That means this tree's been through some tough times, had to weather some real harsh storms. But the tree's standing really strong. And the tree's standing really strong because look below there. See that big rock? He said, look at the relationship between the rock and the tree. It's really tight, it's really close. And you've heard that saying as well, hey, we all need a rock in our life. Well, look at this one. The rock's helping the tree stand up. And sometimes we've got to ask for help because we need help. And that's okay. And then sometimes you've got to be a rock for someone else to help them stand up. And he said, look at the roots, they go deep in the ground. That represents what holds us up. That's our character. That's our values. And the tree's growing both ways. The tree has deep connection to Mother Earth. The roots are continually growing. But the tree's still growing up, searching for the stars, still trying to achieve more, gain greater heights. The tree gives us the shade. The tree gives us the sound of the didgeridoo, the sound of the clapstick. The tree's always giving. And he looked at the young fella and he said, I think I see you in that tree and I think I see me in that tree. And he got up and started walking back. And I said to that young fella, what do you think? What do you think? And he goes, yeah. Mad story, Jeffrey, mad story. I said, well, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? He goes, I've got to stay, hey, I've got to stick it out. He said, yeah. I said, that's it. And that young fella, I still send him the pictures of the tree and he sends back, I love that tree, Uncle, I love that tree. And I said to old uncle, can I share the story about the tree? And he said, yeah, what did old uncle say? You got to give it away to keep it. You can. So that's why I share this story about the tree and about connection to country. And that you, when you will go for a walk in the bush next time and you take kids out or whatever, take the earphones out and let the tree and let nature heighten your senses, hearing, smelling, seeing, feeling, not touching feeling, but feeling inside. Creativity comes back. You feel relaxed, feel at home, connection to country, and a real good story. I'll summarize there and then we can ask any questions after that, Ads. Everyone has a story. We all have a story. We're a human library. We all face with challenges through our life. Life's never smooth sailing. There's ups and downs, there's roller coasters, and there's highs and there's lows. It's how you face the challenges that's important. I stressed about belonging and how we need each other, and about you and your tribe, and about how you're going in your team and your family and what role you're playing. And taking time to slow down and have a think about my well-being, the elders, significant others, the role they play, and the role you're going to play with them as well, and then the role you're going to play with the young ones. What inspires you? Who inspires you? What's your inspiration to keep going? Investing in you, taking time to slow down, taking time to check out. How am I going? How's my physical health going? What do I need to do? How can I improve? My nutrition, my diet. What can I change? What am I doing good? What could I do better? Seeking help to ask about that. How's my mental health going? How are my thoughts? How are my feelings? Do I need to speak to someone? Do I need help? Who can I ask for help? Who's there for me? Who am I there for? Can I see that people need help? Can I be the person that people can talk to? And how are you living? How are you sleeping? Just things make up the foundations of our health and what I can do. So taking a chance to do a self-audit on yourself and then looking at those areas I can improve. And all growth is small, and just making little changes can make big differences because they're all connected. Like the circle, it's all connected. Investing in you. And obviously the last connection to people, connection to country, connection to family, connection to all things around us, but the main connection to yourself and how we talk to ourselves. I'd like to say thank you. I think it's hard for me to speak to a computer. I'm not really good at webinars. I'm more of an in-person man. I love to share story. I feel like I'm honoring the old people like they did, how they passed story on, shared knowledge through story. You know what I mean? I'll hand back to ads and we'll go from there.
Thanks, Jeff. And I'm absolutely with you there when it comes to webinars. Very impersonal, but I must say that that was an amazing presentation. I'm sure everyone joins me in thanking you for sharing that information. It's quite a story, and there's certainly lots of transferable practices when you think about each of our families, your experiences, our social networks, our workplaces in particular, which is a big part of who we are at icare, and our local communities. And it all just seems to come back to that positive connection that we have with one another. There are obviously proven methods that have stood the test of time, and as we've referenced in the past, tens of thousands of years. And really, it's just that caring and supporting for each other through the good and bad times and the highs and lows in life. And I think that you provided some pretty good examples in regard to particularly the youth who you've worked with in the past to help them build a better life for themselves. So congratulations on that front. I will have a question of you in a moment, Jeff, but what we're going to do is we're going to quickly open up the chat box for two reasons. One is we want to obtain everyone's feedback of what they thought of your presentation, Jeff, and two, provide an opportunity to ask you of any questions. So it's just been open now. So what you've got to do is the way it works is if you thought today's session was good, you give us a 4 or a 5, or you give Jeff a 4 or a 5. If you thought it was just okay, a 3, and if it was no good, a 1 or a 2, and we certainly won't invite Jeff back. But whilst you're putting scores in, you'll also notice on this slide there's a little QR code. There's also a bunch of dates there that shows where our mobile engagement team are going to be over the next short while. We're actually going to go visit the regions of Dubbo and Orange, and we've got Joanna starting the second wellness session on the 22nd of August. We've got Anthony Minicello in September, and in October we've got some mental health forums. So if you don't mind, ask your questions in the chat box, and I'll share them with Jeff. But Jeff, I'm going to kick it off if you don't mind. You do reference the connections to country, and I know you're doing some work in regard to building a program around connections to country. Can you tell us a bit about this program that you're working on?
Yeah, well, I'm just about to launch, and I have done it for a long time. I've taken people into country, being so close to the Royal National Park here. It's a wonderful place. and I've just started my own like business called Gunama, where it just means Mother Earth, and where we can take teams for leadership and well-being out of the office. So instead of coming to the office and speaking, we can come on country and do leadership, do well-being, learn about culture, and just have that connection to country. So really looking forward to that as a part of my next part of it, my journey, and to be able to share that because it's been so good to me that, and you know, our old people say it forever, that more people should share, more people should do it. You know, we have the wonderful, wonderful national parks all around us. You know what? I bet not too many people go in them or spend time in them. So that's what I'm looking at doing. I think it's exciting. I've got other people, so we can do culture and I'll get cultural people in. We can have wonderful, wonderful leadership people come with us. Maddie's really keen to be involved and do leadership stuff with us, emotional resilience stuff with us as well. So all different options that we can come up with for teams and groups.
Oh, that's excellent. That sounds great. And I like the advice too that if you do your bushwalk, take your earphones out and listen to the bush.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
pretty special. So we've had a comment here from Hayden as a former ESHS, so Endeavour High, I assume, and Clontarf
Yeah.
boy with Jeff Rowe as a mentor. I've seen the connections Jeff has had with the boys, and great to see Jeff. So nice feedback. One of the kids you mentored, which is good story.
Lovely fella, Hayden. It's so good to see our young people that have had something to do with on their journey go on and do well, you know. And Hayden's, you know, running his own business and is doing wonderful things, which is fantastic. Um, Another one like Alex Johnson, who plays for the Rabbitohs, he's nearly the second highest try scorer of all time was an Endeavour boy who came through the program, and just to see him doing so well, but then to have Hayden and that to come back to share their stories again with the other young ones to show that the young fellas, they were just like you. They were sitting in the chairs there with their school shirts and shorts on, just like you, and you can go on and achieve things just like them. Sharing the storylines are so important.
Yeah, absolutely. And so and I think that just sometimes providing that support, which again you've done for a lot of people, not only kids but also adults, and nowadays you're obviously looking at moving into the business environment to also inspire leaders and workforces in general. So that's something that's also an exciting next chapter for you.
Yeah, and more recently, I've done a little bit of work with Maddie in the wellbeing space and getting out and about, and been fortunate to, you know, share this talk, share this knowledge and different stories to people in hospitals and frontline workers and correctional centres and communities. And you know, I'm passionate about health and the health of Aboriginal people. Our people, you know, die way too young, which is it's a real shame because you know they were given put on missions and stopped moving and given flowers, sugar, and now you know the 250 years later, our people aren't as healthy because we were sat down, we lost our purpose, and to try and inspire people again to push through that. You know, we've survived, but to increase that health and well-being and the education behind that about what's good for you and what you could be doing to improve their own well-being.
Yeah. So Jeff, I have another question here from Gail, and her question is: given the online world we live in, do you have any advice for young adults feeling disconnected?
Yeah, the advice I have, I don't realize it. I've got young people, young kids myself, and the online is tough. But the online is there's positives and negatives to all, you know, with all technology and using it in a good positive way, monitoring that it is a good positive environment that they're involved with, that it's not negative, which as we know can be terribly negative. But having that filter to be able to say to be open about what we're doing in the cyber world, and is it with good intention? You know, are we following good culture when we do it. So being able to share about what we're doing, okay, I'm going to be doing this or being involved in that and this group and that group, and how much time do I spend doing it, and how much time do I give to being online and playing games or whatever it may be, and having a filter, because too much of anything is no good.
Yeah, and I think the struggle is too because so many different people, younger generation, would feel like they miss out too with the online activity if they don't have it.
Yeah,
So I suppose just trying to work out what that balance looks like, and either
that's right.
setting times around it or something along those lines.
Yeah, well, with young ones, you definitely got to set times. Yeah, okay, you can get your homework done and go to training and you get an hour, or Friday Arvo you can, but not during the week. But as we get older, and even our older people are getting addicted now, an instant world, an instant gratification. We want things straight away, or if that beat goes, that gives us that buzz, that high. Where we've got to be conscious about it. It just doesn't happen. We've got to be disciplined and learning the discipline to go with it. That we can hold back, we can wait. We don't have to answer everything straight away. Being present, having those rules. There's no phones at the dinner table when it's our family time. This is our family time now. This is our dinner time. We share in conversation. It's just having those guidelines, those rules around that. And that we all accept that. Why are we doing it? Because this is a time to connect and talk. And then my wife, and it's something we've instilled with our kids, and it's hard. And he goes through some pain, because a phone for a young kid's like ripping their arm off trying to take a phone off someone. I know, I get it, but they understand it, and you got to stay strong with it, letting them know the reason why. This is why we want to do it this way. Not trying to take. You'll get your time. It's trying to find that balance and build that balance, because no filter, and they just go on and on and on. They get caught in it. They jump on like it's jumping on a ride and just not getting off it. Getting on the Big Dipper and just staying on it. Whereas you got to get off it sometimes and smell the
It's like
roses
getting
and
on
see
an,
what's
an
interesting.
escalator, maybe, Jeff. Getting on a different platform.
Exactly. Exactly right.
So yeah. Well, that's there's no more questions coming through. There's a number of comments coming through saying thank you so much, especially the tree talk and the like. So a lot of really nice comments that I'll share with you, Jeff. But but ultimately that's a wrap for today. And Jeff, again, I really do appreciate you coming along and sharing your amazing story from your upbringing to your family. So obviously, there's lots of challenges that you have had. There's lots of highs and lows in life, and it's really nice that you're able to share that with our audience here today. I'll personally give you a rating of a 5 when I get around to it. So I hope you appreciate that. And for everyone who joined us, thanks again for investing in your wellness. As we said, if you're not going to invest in your wellness, you're going to invest in your illness. And we really appreciate you attending today's session. So goodbye and stay safe. Thank you. Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, Az.